eThekwini, on the other hand, has revised its electricity tariff and municipal rates hike. It follows an outcry by residents over what they said was unaffordable increases. There were petitions signed and marches to municipal offices. eNCA's Nqobile Madlala is checking if residents are happy with the revised tariffs and joins me now, of course, to take me through the very latest. Nqobile, good to have you, colleague. Good morning to you. Take me through, of course, this clearly action, protest action that worked out for the residents. They were unhappy with those electricity tariffs.
Definitely not happy at all. I mean, what we saw, unhappy, but we do know that eThekwini had asked for 21.91% of tariffs, saying that everybody must pay around there. This is above the NESA inflation, and you do understand that this becomes a major issue for a lot of people. So a lot of residents took to the streets, they marched, they had petitions saying that this is way too much. You'll remember eThekwini has been faced with quite a lot. A lot of people are still trying to get back to working normal. Some of them have had to rebuild, some of them have had to rebuild after the riots, as well as after the floods, and now on top of that they had to deal with this 21% of an increase, which means that's their income that's being depleted already on their pockets. But we do have ratepayers that are going to speak to us about those issues. I mean, Bluff is one of those areas that had been affected by all sort of things, including the floods, and you are here telling me that this 21% that eThekwini initially proposed, even though it's been revised, was a major issue. Tell me why, Alison.
Yeah, I think considering not only did we have the floods, the riots, which we are battling from, we have had COVID that we are still trying to recover from, and then on top of it, we've got to deal with load shedding. I think eThekwini has failed to take into account that a lot of people cannot generate an income. Many people have been retrenched. So even though there has been a slight concession, the concession made, unfortunately, is still not acceptable. It is still above inflation, and many people simply cannot afford. So we've done many interviews with many residents across the Bluff, across the Westville area, and the feedback almost immediately is there is no money. So we are saying eThekwini there must be a revision of this budget. Public participation was not effectively implemented. The public was not consulted on any decisions taken. There were presentations delivered. Presentation does not satisfy the constitutional participation, effective participation. So we're saying this process was flawed, and yesterday's council meeting was evident of that. The decision was already made to adopt these budgets when the budget was published to the public a mere approximately 6 weeks ago. So no resident was able to dissect that budget and fully comprehend the impact that it was going to have. Currently, people cannot afford the cost of living. Currently, that is before these budget increases. So we are saying no, there has to be a revision, there has to be a rethink. The wasteful expenditure needs to be revised. Wasteful expenditure needs to be recovered, and only once those measures have been taken into account should they consider passing the burden on to the ratepayers. We know 50% of our water is being lost due to illegal connections or bad administration, where water is gushing from the streets for days on end. So I question, we have to accept a 15% increase in water because there's going to be a water scarcity, but where's the haste when dealing with water loss problems? Where is the haste in addressing the illegal connections? Those are all measures that could be implemented to avoid having the ratepayers to accept the burden financially. I've had to tell my staff no increases this year. Last year I've had to retrench staff, yet we're supposed to cover the increases for eThekwini staff. That's insensitive, considering what we are dealing with right now.
Alison, we know that they're saying they're revising that, and in fact eThekwini is going to have a presser just today speaking to that issue. But tell me how this revision is going to affect especially the people that are much older in the community.
So, as I said, currently the people can't afford, never mind any increases. So we've done a little bit of an assessment in terms of figures, and if you look at the average monthly income for a government-funded pensioner, they earn about 1,800 Rand per month. That equates to about 22,000 Rand a year. Having a look at just the general cost of living, cost of paying for electricity and water and medical aid and insurance to cover when they pass on, there is no disposable budget. There is not enough available money to accommodate any increases. We're dealing with prime rates going up. We're dealing with just the general cost of inflation. There is no money. So this is unfortunately going to impact on the pensioners. They're going to end up losing their property, and the unemployment is going to escalate. The social distress is going to escalate. None of this has been taken into consideration. This is not a sustainable budget, even with the small percentage concession.
All right. Thank you very much for speaking to us. And I want to bring you in because you get affected personally.
That's correct.
Tell me a bit about how this affects you as a resident, but also as someone who has to deal with all this increase in the amount of money that you now get.
Okay. The influence and the impact of this increase in tariff rates for Durban makes it for the pensioner unbearable. I'm on pension for 7 years. I have no increase in my pension whatsoever. I take care of my own household as well as my mother, who's 97, her household as well. She gets no benefits either. Her pension remains maximum 3% increase. It's far less than the inflation rate. We can't afford it. If we've got to approve and accept what's coming through now, I've got to sell my property just to keep a place where I can live and keep my family going. I'm currently helping my own kids to survive on my pension, and I have no disposable income for myself. I can't put money away for the day where I've got to pay for a funeral or whatever. Well, not me paying for it, but my next of kin have to pay for it. I've got a 4,000 Rand a month medical bill that I've got to pay, which is not covered by medical aid. So how do I cope with that in life, in my pocket, my bank balance, and say, here I can come and survive a month with these increases, and putting this onto us now is going to make it even worse for us to keep our heads above water. We're actually sinking. We're treading water at the moment. And there are people that are far off worse than what I am. But if I tread water, what about those that are earning far less than what I'm earning as a pension? And that to me is unfair of the city lodgers to managers and councillors just to approve a budget higher than the inflation rate, which is in some cases triple the inflation rate. We just can't afford it. Just unbearable for us.
And I mean, cost of living, he's saying that they can't afford it. Can you afford it?
Barely. You know, we live on a shoestring. Our budgets are very, very tight. So when we look at the increases that have been passed down to us, it just squeezes what isn't left to squeeze. So it means we now need to cut other essentials out of our lives just to be able to sustain. But as a ratepayer in the city, my biggest frustration is when the Auditor General finds 1.5 billion rands worth of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Yet the city will come to us and say we need to increase your rates because we need more money. My challenge to them is stop wasting our money. Stop allowing the supply chain management to steal our money, because then there's more than enough money to pay for the services. We don't get services. If I go into a restaurant and I order a continental breakfast and a cappuccino, that's what I get. When I pay my rates to the city, I'm getting the equivalent of a slice of toast on a plate. There's no service delivery. And with regards to the consultation process, I went to 2 meetings, one where the mayor was present and one where the mayor was supposed to be present and didn't arrive. At the first meeting where the mayor was, they were saying it's a consultation process, it was a presentation of the budget. And when the people in that hall objected to the budget that was being presented, and I quote him verbatim, he turned around and he said, we will pass the budget at the end of May, we will collect the money from the beginning of July. So where's the consultation? They knew that these increases were a foregone conclusion. But as a result, I think, of pressure that Ratepayers Association and civic groups brought on the city, they've given us these marginal concessions to say, well, we did listen to you. You didn't listen to us. You listened to us when we screamed. But had you consulted with us, the budget would be a very different thing. And that's our challenge with the city.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. Well, Nqobile, you can hear there quite clearly the cost of living has gone up. It's very difficult for anyone at this point to survive, and that's what ratepayers are saying. Even though this has been revised and been looked at, and we'll find out from eThekwini shortly, but this is very difficult for many people, especially the pensioners.
All right, well, thank you so much, Nqobile, for bringing this story to the fore. Feeling the pinch there, residents out in eThekwini. This still even after revised tariff rates in the municipality of eThekwini, saying they simply can't afford it. There's just no money for it. And you can see with the interest rates hike, a lot of people lamenting the cost of living in the country. But also, if you know, with the context of KwaZulu-Natal, you know there's been a lot that they had been going through there. The July unrest, the floods had been wreaking havoc, of course, in the community of the province, but also right now with the water issues, and again having to take out more money to pay for their tariffs. That's, of course, my colleague Nqobile Madlala on that story.